I stared at the courtroom floor, my fingers clenched tightly around the cold leather of my bag. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. This time, it was something else. Relief. Victory. As the judge declared the ruling in my favour, a part of me wanted to scream with joy, but I held it back. I turned my gaze towards Olivia, the woman who had spent the past 3 years making my life a living nightmare. Her carefully painted face was streaked with tears, her lips trembling as if she couldn't believe this was happening. But it was real. I won, and she wasn't expecting it. As I walked out of the courtroom, I took a deep breath, letting the cool breeze fill my lungs. This wasn't just a legal win. It was the end of a chapter filled with betrayal, pain, and loneliness. My ex-husband, Daniel, stood near the entrance, frozen, as if processing everything. For a second, he met my eyes, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years: regret. But it didn't matter anymore. What was done, and I wasn't looking back. 3 years ago, I would have never imagined myself here. I was a happy wife, living in a cozy suburban home with Daniel and our 2 kids, Emma and Ryan. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or so I thought. I can still remember the day I noticed the change in Daniel, the way he stopped laughing at my jokes, the way he started working late more often. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was too busy with the kids or too tired to pay attention to his needs. But the truth hit me like a slap in the face when I saw the message pop up on his phone. Olivia, I miss you already. That night, the arguments began. I begged him to stay for the sake of the kids, for the life we had built together, but he had already checked out. Within weeks, I was packing his bags. He didn't even look back as he left. At first, I was broken. I cried myself to sleep, thinking about what I could have done differently. But when I saw him publicly posting pictures with Olivia just 2 months after our separation, something inside me snapped. Olivia wasn't just any woman. She was charming, attractive, and calculated. She slid into Daniel's life as if she'd been planning it for years. When they got married, she wasted no time making her presence known. At first, I tried to be civil. I didn't want my kids caught in the middle of our mess. But Olivia had other plans. She didn't want peace. She wanted control. And she knew exactly how to get it. It started subtly. Emma and Ryan would come home from their weekends at their dad's house and suddenly act distant. They didn't want to talk about school, their friends, or anything they used to share with me. Olivia said, "You're too busy for us," Emma once whispered when I asked what was wrong. I tried not to cry, but that night I broke down. The thought of my children seeing me as the villain crushed me. Then came the rumours. Friends I had known for years started avoiding me. I heard whispers at school events and neighbourhood gatherings, things that Olivia had planted. Apparently, I was unstable and jealous. Even Daniel had begun treating me like an afterthought, refusing to listen when I brought up concerns about the kids' behaviour. Olivia had him wrapped around her finger. She was the perfect stepmother, at least in public. But behind the scenes, she was poisoning my family against me. The day I found out Daniel had stopped paying child support without warning was the day I realised this wasn't just personal. It was war. I called him, furious, but he barely cared. "Olivia thinks you're spending the money on yourself," he said as if it were fact. That night, I sat in my car, crying and gripping the steering wheel, wondering how I could fight someone like her. She had money, influence, and Daniel on her side. I had nothing but a broken heart and 2 kids who were slipping away from me. But I wasn't about to give up. The first small crack in Olivia's perfect plan came on a cold evening when I least expected it. I was sitting at the dining table, staring at a stack of bills I could barely afford to pay when my phone buzzed. It was Emma, my 14-year-old daughter. She hadn't called me in weeks, not since Olivia had started poisoning her mind. I answered quickly, my voice trembling with hope. "Emma? Sweetheart, are you okay?" I asked, trying to stay calm. There was a pause, followed by a soft sniffle. "Mum, can I come over? Just for a little while?" I felt my throat tighten as tears welled in my eyes. "Of course you can. I'll come pick you up right now." By the time I reached Daniel's house, Emma was standing on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself. She didn't say a word as she climbed into the car, but the moment we pulled out of the driveway, she broke down. Through sobs, she confessed what had been going on. Olivia wasn't just bad-mouthing me, she was controlling every aspect of their lives. She dictated what they wore, how they spoke, and even monitored their phones. She played the perfect stepmother in front of Daniel, but behind closed doors she was cold and demanding. Emma had been afraid to speak up, but tonight Olivia had crossed a line by punishing her for refusing to call her Mum. "She's not my mum, and she never will be," Emma whispered through tears, her head resting against my shoulder. I held her tightly, my mind racing. This wasn't just about me anymore. My kids were suffering under Olivia's manipulation. I knew then that I had to act, not just to save myself, but to protect them. But how? Daniel was blind to everything Olivia did, and any time I tried to confront him, he brushed me off, calling me bitter and obsessed. Then, a week later, fate handed me my first real weapon. A mutual friend, Sarah, reached out to me. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce, but she had heard things that could change everything. "You didn't hear it from me," she said cautiously, "but Olivia's not as perfect as she pretends to be. She's been meeting up with someone behind Daniel's back." At first, I thought it was just gossip, but Sarah insisted she had proof. She sent me screenshots of messages Olivia had exchanged with another man, messages that were far too intimate to be innocent. My hand shook as I scrolled through them. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. I knew this wasn't enough on its own, but it was a start. I needed more. I needed to hit her where it hurt. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I spent the little savings I had left, but I knew it would be worth it. If Olivia wanted to play dirty, I could too. The investigator didn't take long to uncover the truth. Olivia wasn't just having an affair, she was also hiding massive debt from Daniel, debt she had been secretly covering by dipping into his bank accounts. When I received the investigator's final report, I couldn't help but smile. This was it, the leverage I needed to finally turn the tables. But I wasn't ready to strike just yet. I needed to be patient, to make sure everything was perfectly timed. Olivia had taken so much from me, and now it was my turn. I could already see the cracks forming in her life. She just didn't know it yet. The cracks widened faster than I anticipated. Emma began visiting me more often, each time bringing new details that painted a clearer picture of Olivia's crumbling control. Ryan, my younger son, had been more resistant to reconnecting with me, but even he started to question things. One evening, while Emma and I were baking cookies in the kitchen, Ryan sent me a text that nearly made me drop the mixing bowl. "Mum, can I talk to you about something important?" He hadn't called me Mum in over a year. I immediately texted him back, and within minutes he was standing in my doorway, looking hesitant and unsure. "Emma told me some things," he mumbled, staring at the floor, "about Olivia. Is it true that she's been lying to Dad about you?" I knelt down in front of him, gently placing my hands on his small shoulders. "Yes, sweetheart, but you don't have to worry. I'm going to make sure everything is okay. I promise," his eyes filled with tears as he hugged me, and in that moment, I knew Olivia's grip on my family was loosening. But I couldn't stop there. The evidence I had on her needed to be used strategically. If I played my cards right, I could not only regain custody of my kids, but also expose Olivia for the fraud she truly was. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. Daniel called me unexpectedly one evening, his voice tense. "Olivia's been acting strange lately," he admitted. "She's been really stressed about money, and I don't understand why. I thought everything was fine financially." I bit my lip, fighting the urge to unleash everything I knew right then and there. Instead, I kept my tone neutral. "Maybe it's time you take a closer look at things, Daniel. There might be more going on than you realize." He hesitated, clearly unsure whether to trust me. But doubt had been planted, and that was all I needed for now. I knew it wouldn't be long before he started uncovering things on his own. Still, I couldn't leave everything to chance. I worked with my lawyer to prepare for a custody hearing, submitting the private investigator's report as evidence of Olivia's financial misdeeds and manipulative behaviour. I also included statements from Emma about how Olivia had mistreated her and Ryan. As the court date approached, I kept my head down and stayed focused. Olivia, on the other hand, was unravelling. Mutual friends began telling me about her erratic behaviour, cancelling plans last minute, snapping at people in public, and even showing up at Daniel's office unannounced to argue about money. She was losing control, and it was only a matter of time before it all exploded. That explosion finally came during a family dinner at Daniel's house. Emma later told me everything. Olivia had been on edge the entire evening, nitpicking and making snide comments until Daniel finally snapped. "What's going on with you, Olivia?" he demanded, slamming his fork down on the table. "Why are you constantly acting like this?" She tried to brush it off, but Daniel wasn't letting it go. He brought up the discrepancies he had found in their finances and the sudden drain on his savings. That's when she lost it, shouting accusations and deflecting blame. But the more she tried to defend herself, the more Daniel's suspicion grew. By the end of the night, he was furious, and Olivia stormed out of the house. The next morning, Daniel called me. "We need to talk," he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired, broken, like a man finally realizing he had been living a lie. I agreed to meet him at a local cafe, where he sat across from me, staring at his coffee cup as if it held all the answers. "I think I made a huge mistake," he finally said, lifting his eyes to meet mine. "I didn't see it before, but Olivia, she's not who I thought she was. I know she's been lying about you, and I know she's been hiding things from me." I took a deep breath, the weight of years of pain and betrayal slowly lifting off my shoulders. "I tried to tell you, Daniel," I said softly, "but you weren't ready to listen." "I'm ready now," he replied, and just like that, the tables had officially turned. The courtroom was colder than I expected, or maybe it was just my nerves. I sat next to my lawyer, clutching the edges of my chair as the judge entered. Olivia sat on the other side of the room, her carefully crafted composure slipping with every passing second. She looked over at me, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. The woman who had once controlled everything now looked like she was holding on by a thread. Daniel sat near her, but he wasn't offering comfort. His body was stiff, his gaze fixed on the judge, as if he couldn't bear to look at the woman who had deceived him. I could only imagine the tension between them that morning. They had arrived separately, which told me more than words ever could. As the hearing began, my lawyer presented the evidence, proof of Olivia's manipulation, her lies and her financial fraud. The courtroom fell silent as emails, text messages, and bank records were displayed. My heart raced as each piece of evidence painted the picture I had been living through for the past 3 years. Olivia's lawyer tried to argue that the evidence wasn't strong enough to prove her intentions, but my lawyer was relentless. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Emma's statement. She stood in front of the court, her voice trembling at first, but growing stronger with each word. Olivia made me believe my mom didn't care about us. She told me things that weren't true, and I didn't realise how much it hurt my mom until now. I could feel tears welling up, but I held them back. I needed to stay strong. When Emma finished, I glanced at Olivia, who was nervously tapping her nails against the table, her confidence crumbling before everyone's eyes. Then it was Daniel's turn. He cleared his throat, his gaze finally shifting to Olivia. "I trusted you," he said, his voice steady but laced with bitterness. "I believed everything you said, and I let you drive a wedge between me and the mother of my children. But I see it now. You weren't protecting them, you were protecting yourself." The room fell silent. Olivia's face turned pale, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability. She wasn't the untouchable woman she had pretended to be. She was exposed, her lies unraveling in front of everyone. When the judge announced the ruling in my favour, it didn't feel real at first. But as I walked out of the courtroom, with Emma and Ryan by my side, I knew it was over. The woman who had tried to destroy my life had lost everything. Her marriage, her reputation, and the control she once held so tightly. As I reached the courthouse steps, Daniel caught up with me. He looked exhausted, as if the weight of the last few years had finally hit him all at once. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." I nodded, accepting the apology, but not offering forgiveness. "I hope you figure things out, Daniel. For the kids' sake." He didn't argue, just gave me a small nod before walking away. For the first time in years, I felt free. This wasn't just a legal victory. It was my chance to rebuild, to heal, and to start over without the shadow of Olivia hanging over me. And as I held my kids' hands, I knew that was all I needed. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind, but for the first time in years, it was the kind of chaos I welcomed. Emma and Ryan were officially living with me again, and the house, once filled with silence and heartbreak, came back to life. The sounds of laughter, homework discussions, and movie nights replaced the lonely evenings I had grown so used to. It wasn't perfect. Healing rarely is. Emma was adjusting well, but Ryan had moments where he struggled, often asking questions about why things had gotten so bad in the first place. I never lied to him, but I also didn't burden him with every detail. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said one night while tucking him into bed. "But what matters is that we're here now, together, and I'll never let you go again." He hugged me tightly, his small arms wrapped around my neck, and I realised that no victory in court could compare to that moment. Meanwhile, Olivia's world was falling apart faster than I had anticipated. She had tried to reach out to Daniel after the ruling, begging him for a second chance, but he wasn't interested. "I'm done," he told her coldly during their last phone call, which Emma overheard and eagerly relayed to me. "You lied to me, to the kids, and to yourself. There's no coming back from this." Word spread quickly throughout the community. The same people who had once whispered behind my back now looked at Olivia with disdain. The PTA mums who had once praised her for being the perfect stepmother avoided her at school events, and former friends stopped returning her calls. Even Sarah, who had given me the initial tip about Olivia's affair, admitted that Olivia had tried to manipulate her into covering up the truth. "She burned too many bridges," Sarah said with a shrug. "She's on her own now." But Olivia wasn't one to go down without a fight. She made one last desperate attempt to regain control, showing up uninvited to Daniel's house one evening, dressed impeccably, as if she could charm her way back into his life. Emma, who had been there visiting her dad, watched the entire encounter unfold. "It was so awkward," she said when she came home that night. She begged him to reconsider, and when he said no, she just stood there, frozen, like she couldn't believe it. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for Olivia, but it didn't last long. She had chosen this path, and now she was facing the consequences. The final nail in her coffin came when Daniel officially filed for divorce. Olivia had tried to negotiate a settlement, but her financial secrets left her with little leverage. She walked away with barely anything, a far cry from the woman who once thought she had it all. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had spent years trying to destroy my life, and in the end, she had destroyed her own. One afternoon, I stood by the window, watching the kids play outside, when my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. "Thank you for fighting for them. I see that now. I won't let them down again." I stared at the message, unsure of how to respond. After everything we had been through, I wasn't ready to forgive him completely. But I also knew that holding on to the past wouldn't help me move forward. So, I sent a simple reply. "Good. They need you." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the backyard, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. This wasn't just the end of Olivia's reign over my life. It was the beginning of something new, something better. I wasn't the woman who'd been betrayed and broken anymore. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to rebuild the life I deserved. And this time, no one was going to take it from me. Months passed, and life gradually settled into a rhythm that felt like home again. I was no longer surviving. I was thriving. I had gotten a promotion at work, which meant financial stability for me and the kids. The late nights of crying over bills were a distant memory, replaced by evenings filled with laughter, home-cooked meals, and family game nights. Emma had joined the school's theatre club, and Ryan had started playing soccer again. Watching them rediscover their happiness was the most rewarding part of it all. But as peaceful as life had become, there was one thing still lingering in the back of my mind. The weight of the past. I had won the battle, yes, but the war had left scars. There were nights when I'd lie awake, wondering if Olivia would try to make a comeback, or if Daniel would slip back into old habits. I didn't want to live in fear anymore, but healing takes time. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat on the back porch, sipping tea and gazing at the stars. The cool breeze carried the scent of fresh grass, and for once, my mind was calm. That was when my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, half expecting it to be something from Olivia. But it wasn't her. It was Sarah. "Have you heard about Olivia?" I hesitated before typing back. "Number, what happened?" Sarah's reply came almost instantly. "She left town. Rumour is she sold her house and moved back to live with her parents. Guess she couldn't handle the shame." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. I wasn't surprised. After the court ruling, the divorce, and the social fallout, Olivia had become a shell of the woman she once was. She had tried so hard to ruin my life, but in the end, it was her life that fell apart. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, closure, and yes, a twinge of pity. But mostly, I felt free. The next morning, as I made breakfast, Emma came into the kitchen and wrapped her arms around me. "Mum," she said softly, "thank you for not giving up on us." I smiled, running my fingers through her hair. "I could never give up on you and Ryan. No matter what happens, you two are my world." Later that day, Ryan came running up to me with a drawing he had made at school. It was a picture of the three of us standing under a rainbow, smiling. He had written in large, colourful letters at the top, My happy family. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes as I hugged him tightly. That simple drawing was a reminder of how far we had come, of how much we had survived, and of how strong we had become. Olivia's presence was no longer a shadow looming over us. We had reclaimed our happiness, and no amount of the past could take that away. As the kids played outside, I sat by the window and allowed myself to reflect on everything I had been through. The betrayal, the loneliness, the fight, it had all shaped me into the woman I was today. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I was free. And as I watched Emma chase Ryan around the yard, their laughter filling the air, I realised something profound. Sometimes, the people who try to break you are the ones who end up breaking themselves. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living a life so full of joy and love that those who try to destroy you become nothing but a forgotten chapter in your story. This was my life now, and I was finally ready to live it.